So what we can see in here is that we've got actually about half the people in this room are undergraduates or postgraduates or early postdocs. And I think that really speaks to the type of activity that we're trying to have here, and also speaks really to the talent that we've got in our young people, and you know, that makes me, you know, really excited. So anyway, so with this is our showcase, and what I want to do is just first off give an acknowledgement of to our traditional owners. QUT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara people as the First Nations owners of the land on which QUT now stands. We pay respects to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits. We recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning. QUT acknowledges the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. And I'm proud to be standing on these lands that have been places of teaching and learning and research. The Centre for Data Science has as its overall vision to be a national and global leader in the development of frontier methods for the use of data to benefit our world. And that last part is really then the motivation for this program on data science and social good. And what we do in the centre then is undertake core research, and then across the university bring together the different domain-specific expertise in the different areas through this program of research, data science research at QUT. And then we have also close connections with our external partners. So across the university then for the Centre for Data Science, we go through touch many different areas and draw from that expertise. And it's this kind of expertise that we can bring to programs like Data Science for Social Good. So I would like now to hand over to the main person who has been doing all the hard work. I just get to the pleasure of introducing it, and then I hand over to Farzana Jahan here, who has been the real driver of this program. So thank you, Farzana, and over to you.
Thanks, Kerry. Thank you all for coming to this showcase for Data Science for Social Good. It's been a long time that we have been working to develop this, and now we have completed 2 projects, and that brings us here to showcase. So when we started conceptualizing data science for social good, when Kerry, Charlie, we were a team, we were having initial conversation about social good is something that benefits the public or general people in some way. And in data science, we have the techniques, skills that can help get better insights from available data. So how can we merge both of these? How can the data science skill can bring social good? And that's when we thought about this pro bono program, Data Science for Social Good. So with me, I have Charlie and Rachel, who are coordinating this program. So we started of thinking that who will be the organization with whom we can partner. And then we thought there are social enterprises, not-for-profit organizations who are already working for social good. So we wanted to extend a hand of support to help them in solving some of their data problems by the skills we have at the Center for Data Science. And also we wanted to enable our recent graduates, students, postdoc to do some work that can contribute to social good and that can give them some experience for working in a team. So that's the total initiative, Data Science for Social Good. So the key points of it was it should be short, sharp, and impactful. So we wanted to create a pro bono engagement. We wanted to avoid all the hassle for IP and expectation for academic publications. Rather, we wanted to start with a real life problem that can be solved by a bunch of students or recent graduates with some mentoring from center experts, academics, and the industry people as well. So then we started talking about it with so many people in the QUT. So we started in February, and I still remember the date that in 19th February, we had our first meeting with all the head of schools, deputy director like David, and other center directors of QUT, where we were pitching this idea and we wanted to hear their thoughts. And we were happy to get so many positive feedback and comment on the initial meeting. Then we work through the next 2 months, we're working through the development, like how it would go, what will be the structure, and how we are going to initiate this. After that, we involved the QUT legal teams. So Michael Evans was really helpful in creating the contract procedures, terms and conditions legally. And we were lucky to create a very general specific terms and condition, which is available on website. So any nonprofit or social enterprise, they can go and look at the terms and conditions. If they're happy, then it's just very easier to start a project. So as in the structure, we can see, so we want a problem from any social enterprises or not-for-profit organizations. They can then come to us, or they can express their UIs through the website. Then we will potentially meet online or in person to talk about the potential project. We will scope it out. We'd create a project description, and then we will sort out the contract. And all of these are very quick, so we can do it within a month. We have done it previously, so that's the best part. And after that, we have so many people, like so many recent graduates, postdoc, and early career researchers who want to do something good, who want to utilize their skills for social good. So we got those EOIs from people all over the QUT and outside the QUT as well, who were recent graduates. So we then pitch the project to those people to get the team members who are interested to work on particular social good projects. So that's the second stage of the structure. So we select a team. We have some mentoring from the Center for Data Science. We have some mentoring from the nonprofit because they know their problems. And that's how the project starts. Then the team mentors from both organizations work hard to solve their problem. And then at the end, they report their results. So we will see the teams will report or will present some of their work experience and results today with us. That will also give all of us a better idea, like what type of things we are doing now. But we are open to more projects. The key idea is anything that helps people in general that can contribute to social good. So there are a number of benefits of this program. So I would say as a student, when I was a student or when I started as an early career researcher, the benefit to me was I get to work with different people. I get to work in a multidisciplinary team. I get to solve a real life problem without like much effort, without going through a specific or rigorous contract process or employment. So that gives me a benefit of learning from each other in a team, learning from my mentors, my teammates. So that's the one thing I would say very, very beneficial for QUT participants, recent graduates and teams. And for the nonprofits and social enterprises, I would say there are few nonprofits, like we would hear from one of our partners today, that they are new or they are not doing so much research on their own. So it might help them to get some expertise and some skills from our students and us to solve their problem. And sometimes it can help them to get a different perspective to solve their problem. So that was all about the benefits of the program we thought of. And now we started it this August. It's undergoing, and we want to expand it as well. So without me talking so much, I would now introduce the two completed projects we did successfully this semester. So the first one was with Cancer Council Queensland. And before I call the team members and before they talk about the project, I'd kindly request Peter and Jess, who are our key partners from Cancer Council Queensland, to come up here and talk about Cancer Council Queensland and their involvement with us through Data Science for Social Good. So please welcome Professor Peter Bate.
Afternoon. This works. Okay. Cancer Council Queensland is a not-for-profit organisation whose mission is to reduce the burden of cancer in the community. Cancer Council Queensland is dedicated to improving the quality of life for people living with cancer. And it does this through research, patient care, support and accommodation, advocacy, prevention and early detection activities. Oh, I was focusing. Okay. So those are the missions. I missed the slide, sorry. Okay. So within the Cancer Council research team, there are three main program areas. First, the descriptive epidemiology team aims to describe the patterns and trends in the cancer burden across Queensland, across Australia and internationally. And also to begin to understand the factors that are contributing to those factors, are contributing to those patterns. Then the second program area is childhood cancer, which includes the Australian Childhood Cancer Registry, containing all cases of childhood cancer which are diagnosed across Australia. And it's recognised as one of the longest running and most comprehensive databanks of its type in the world. Then the third area is the health systems and behavioural research, which involves identifying and improving challenges relating to social and geographical inequalities in cancer-related outcomes. CCQ also funds an external competitive cancer research grant scheme, which is primarily focused on the clinical grants area. So throughout all these program areas, we definitely recognise and have benefited from the benefits of developing collaborative partnerships, both nationally and internationally. And this helps us achieve all or some of our goals. And as Kerry mentioned earlier, we have particularly valued the successful partnership formed with QUT researchers across several projects, and that's particularly with the School of Mathematical Sciences. So of all these programs, I have the honour of leading the descriptive epidemiology research program. So the scope of our program includes the routine online reporting of cancer statistics, understanding the experiences of women diagnosed with breast cancer, quantifying the cancer survival disparities which are faced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are diagnosed with cancer. And also, I have to mention this, our landmark project, the industry award-winning Australian Cancer Atlas. So this atlas was developed in collaboration with QUT, and it was first launched in September 2018. And the Australian Cancer Atlas provides a free online interactive atlas that visualises how the cancer incidence and survival patterns for 20 cancer types varies across Australia by small geographical areas. In March this year, we started work on Atlas 2.0, which will include a wider range of cancer-related indicators. It will include information about how the geographical patterns in those indicators change over time, and also improve the method about how to communicate these key messages from the Atlas over to a wide range of users. And as I mentioned earlier, a key aspect of all our work, and particularly with the Atlas, is collaborations. So all these collaborations give us access to a wider range of skills, experience, and perspectives that are crucial to the success of the project. So that's the reason, after we heard about this initiative, we were excited about it, and it just gives us, or gave us, the opportunity of meeting up and talking about all these ideas with a group of motivated and skilled individuals. And we jumped at the opportunity initially, and it's worked out really well. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So now I would like to invite the team who have worked with Peter, Jess, and Cancer Council Queensland on their first project. So Owen will be presenting online, and we have the other team member, Nitesh, here. So please come, introduce yourselves, the problem. Good luck.
Checking that the slides are all working okay.
Hello, everyone. We are here presenting our findings and journey, the project we had with the Cancer Council Queensland and QUT's Data Science for Social Good. My name is Nitesh. I'm a recent graduate from QUT, and this is Owen.
Can you share your screen again?
Try again. Yeah, I can. Is that working, Farzana?
Yes.
Thank you. So the focus of the project was developing an additional visualization and communication strategies for methods and insights of the Australian Cancer Atlas. The objectives were improving presentation and communication uncertainties and communicating the inferences, what can or cannot be done or cannot be supported based on the model estimates of Cancer Atlas, and explaining what can be inferred based on the model estimates. Also, reorganizing and highlighting the methodological information that is already available in the Cancer Atlas website to support correct interpretation by different user types. So, for the tailored communication of statistical result and decision support, the information for a different typical audience. A zoomed out view of what we have done during the project is as follows. It's to understand the user challenge and expectation. We have used user experience survey, which the Cancer Atlas already had. And after reviewing and conducting some informal qualitative analysis, we identified that the user experience varies depending on the user requirement and their data literacy. For this purpose, we categorized the users and developed a persona profile so as to provide a tailored experience for each of the user category. In doing same, we also expanded the option of spatial visualizing uncertainties for better understanding of visualization for different user categories. To reduce the data misinterpretation and improve readability of the information available on the Cancer Atlas, we propose the dynamic report embedding within Cancer Atlas, which not only provides information which is currently available on the Atlas, but also comprehensibility of the information depicted by the Cancer Atlas. We will see in detail information on why we propose these features on the dynamic reporting in the upcoming slides. To begin with, the persona profile, the recommendation and key component of our work were motivated both by goals and the tasks given by CCQ alongside the themes we identified using the user survey feedback. User persona profile is a tool that will be useful in scoping the needs and interests of a different typical user group and allowing a tailored experience of a platform to cater to the different goals and the data literacy levels of different users. Our qualitative analysis identified three main user categories, which are general public, researchers, and policymakers. General public. The important purpose would be to take a decision of healthcare, of awareness and family and healthcare decisions. So for this, to prioritize for the Cancer Council, Queensland, so what we did was to prioritize our work to reach out to a general public, and for the larger audience, we prioritize the user persona for the general public, and to conduct further work, we use the general public as our user persona profile. So for the sake of demonstration, this is a general public persona profile. This intend to illustrate how these suggestions can be represented in a tailored way and adjust the complexity, level of detail, and supporting information according to the interests and needs of a particular user type. This is one part of the dynamic reporting which we are going to present, and the further parts of the dynamic report will be presented by Owen. Over to you, Owen.
Awesome, thank you, Nitesh. So hi everyone, my name's Owen. I'm a PhD student in statistics at QUT. The second part of the work that I'll briefly talk about here is thinking about different options for spatial visualization of uncertainty. So as it was currently in the version 1 of the Atlas, there's an option to overlay the map with a transparency layer that will show more uncertain area level estimates as closer to the national average. And this is attractive in that it's easy to comprehend, but it's challenging if you're interested in how the uncertainty itself is spatially distributed. So in collaboration with CCQ, we identified a couple of options that we recommended expanding and adding to the platform. One option being a glyph-based method. So here you can see that, as usual, the estimate itself is represented by color spread across the map. And then the uncertainty is represented by this glyph, which here are circles, where the size of those glyphs represents a local measure of uncertainty. Another option that we discussed with CCQ was an option where you map each unique estimate to a different color or a different hue. And then the dimension of uncertainty is mapped to the whiteness of that color. And so the benefits of these options is that you get to see both of those dimensions of how the estimates are spatially distributed and how the uncertainty itself is spatially distributed. So what we were thinking through these recommendations is that by adding more options and giving the user control over which they like and which they find easy to interpret, we can tailor the level of complexity and the detail according to the data literacy and the interests of different user types. And through doing this, we hope to enhance a sense of user engagement and a sense of data agency when we're using the platform. The next piece that we worked on was an idea of when you're interested in comparing risk of cancer and the uncertainty around those model estimates across multiple spatial areas. So currently in the Atlas, if you are trying to compare a specific cancer across spatial areas, you get this panel over on the right, which is containing a lot of information that includes uncertainty estimates. And we thought that it would be helpful to pull this out and create a dynamic report that allows users to have more clarity and supporting information to digest this information. So here's an example of the prototype that we've developed. And so what we have in mind here is a modular design where the additional layers of information can be tailored according to the different user persona of the person engaging with the website. So zooming in on the top half here, we've got the V plot and the wave plots already from the Atlas. And what we're doing is we're pulling out key insights and helping the user to unpack and digest particular key points of interest. And in the bottom half here, what we've done is we've overlaid additional sources of information to compare those two spatial areas, including information from the census on demographic composition, some information here on how the cancer is distributed according to age and gender. And these modules over here are health support resources if you're engaging as a healthcare consumer. and also bringing some methodological information that's already available elsewhere on the Atlas website and really foregrounding it to support the user to make accurate and clear interpretation of what the model's telling you and how to interpret the risk and uncertainty around those estimates. So overall, this was a really valuable experience for us and was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed collaborating with Jess and Peter at CCQ. Some of the key benefits for us were getting to work with the client and kind of iteratively revising the scope of the project so that we could identify how our skill sets could best match up with their needs and interests in the project. And it was a really valuable experience that I'm looking forward to putting on my CV in terms of industry collaboration and working on a really positive, socially meaningful project in a contained timeline, and gave us the chance to really broaden our skills in data science communication. But yeah, we just wanted to say a big thank you to Jess and Peter and CCQ, and thank you Farzana, Charlie, Rachel, and Kerry for all your mentorship and support in this project.
We began to talk about the possibility of a national atlas in about 2014, which it's actually been a group of us just talking about it, kind of getting this bubble around us with lots of great ideas. However, it began to feel as if it was a bubble, which is the benefit about collaborating, which is getting these fresh ideas and everything, which meeting up with you guys with the fortnightly meeting and initially describing the project and having that grasp, even what the research questions would be. We really valued your questions, how you were thinking about it, the different angles that you're approaching it from, which we'll now be collaborating with the advisor group here at QUT and actually developing the visualizations and the digital architecture, which it's actually worked out perfectly with getting your thoughts and everything, which will definitely motivate us with thinking about the different key users, thinking about giving additional context as well, which has all been motivated by the work that you've been carrying out over the last 3 months. So thank you very much. And it was a pleasure working with you. And thank you to you.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Nitesh and Owen. For interest of time, I think we will hear from another group first, and then we will open the floor for question. And we have a panel discussion coming up. So now thanks very much, Cancer Council Queensland and our project team. So there was one completed project in this semester. We have another project. Kerry also briefly mentioned about our partner. That's FairShare Queensland. And we have Kelly from FairShare. So I'd request Kelly to come up here and talk about FairShare first, and then we would hand over to the team for their presentation. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you, Farzana. I'm Kelly Watson, and I'm the Director of FairShare Queensland. We are we run Australia's largest charity kitchens. And until 3 years ago, we were only based out of Victoria. We utilise surplus food that would otherwise go to landfill and use an army of volunteers to cook around 5,000 meals a day that are then given away to charities, services, Indigenous communities, DV centres, homeless shelters, councils, anyone who's undergoing emergency food relief throughout Queensland. We have about 500 volunteers, and our kitchen is the size of a basketball court. And we have 5 qualified chefs, a kitchen hand, but everyone else, apart from myself and 2 admin staff, are volunteers. As such, we tend to concentrate on business as usual, the operations, troubleshooting, and we rarely have time to do a project like this, which has been a fantastic opportunity for us and adds so much value. So when I come up from Melbourne 4 years ago, I didn't even know Brisbane was hilly. I've been here once before to see a concert in West End in 1988, and I was pretty drunk. So we brought up here a team of staff. Now we've got more Brisbaneers, but we just didn't know how geographically vast Queensland was. I mean, everyone goes, oh yeah, Cairns, the nearest capital city is Port Moresby. We've heard all those old adages, but for us to get our meals out of southeast Queensland is incredibly difficult. And the welfare sector as a whole concentrates on, day-to-day business. And there's not a lot of research about where the need is. And that need changes all the time. We'd never seen international students needing food relief till COVID. I mean, sure, we'd seen a little bit of it, but nothing like the surge during COVID. COVID's changed a lot of things. People are moving geographically around Australia. And so when, Kerry, you came to me with the idea of doing a project, we jumped at it because we want to know more about Queensland. We want to know where are those pockets of disparity? Where are those councils who are, where are the poverty indicators there? What charities are operating in those areas? Is there public transport? How do people access this food? And I had some, very out there idea of what would happen, and we chopped it back and refined it. And it's been a wonderful exercise. And I see it now. We're not scared of data analytics at FairShare, and we can really see its value. And sorry, I haven't prepared anything, so it's a bit off the cuff. But it has been a great experience, and I look forward to seeing what our team has got for us today.
Thanks, Kelly. We'd hear from you after the team presents on your feedback. Yep. Over to you.
They have to, yeah. I will just share. I'm going to talk to the mic. Yes. Okay. Thank you all for being here. So on behalf of the team, Hamish and I will present our work. My name is Lan. I'm a recent graduate, and I'm graduated from not like data analytics, but digital communication, and I'm studying with team actually. So I'm going to start first by talking the first component of our work for FairShare. So as Kelly has all introduced, give some background information about FairShare. So I will just briefly mention that FairShare has been very largest kitchen in Melbourne, and they started in Brisbane in 2018. And the focus of the work is about food insecurity, which is a thing that I haven't been aware of ever since until I came here. as an international student, and during COVID-19, this makes it worse. And food insecurity often come with like financial insecurity, and it can affect not just urban area but remote and regional areas, and especially among indigenous population. So as FairShare they are developing a kind of distribution project in Brisbane, in Queensland, and the main question is how can they make sure that they target the community in the area in need, and they have the Australian in crisis. So at first, the main focus of the work is about developing a map that we can visualize and see the communities and the area in need. The scope of the project at first is quite broad, but as we discuss and work together, we kind of develop it. The issues coming up is about the data, because as we work with the data, we find the data is it's a bit, we focus on LGA, which is local government areas. And this in Queensland, we have like 79 LGA. And this is very big. And not all the data have this, cover at this level. And at first we think about finding charities is we will get it from ACNC data. But the thing is ACNC data, you can have the local charities and local food relief programs. So by talking with Kelly from FairShare, we have come up with an idea of leverage like web pages. Yes, it's okay, better. Thank you. So we have come up with the idea of leverage web pages as a source of local information. This is we want to find the location of supermarket in Queensland so that FairShare can have a look at it, and they can even like collaborate with some of the supermarket to rescue food and then bring food to remote and regional areas. So that's why we scrape the data from Yellow Page to have all of the location of the supermarket in Queensland. And the second idea is actually come up in a meeting with Kelly, that we use the Ask Easy webpage and we scrape that all the local food relief programs. This is a good webpage actually, because it's run by a non-for-profit organization. Like they have all of the services that you can find in Queensland. So I use Python and Selenium to scrape the data and combine it at the LGA level. And we also include some other critical factors in variable like demographic, indigenous population, unemployment, domestic violence, so that we can actually identify which area in need, but it doesn't have a lot of food programs and supermarket. So I think let me just show you the map. Okay. So actually, the map here, we already include the other demographic, economic variable here, but the location, I will just focus on the location. Yeah, and the location here, as I combine all the data, it's not surprising at all, because as we talk with Kelly, we can actually think we can know that the supermarket and all the food relief programs concentrate in central areas. It actually like in Brisbane, Gold Coast, as you can see here, if we select the LGA, most of them is focused on this area. So that is the location, the first layer of the map. And what I want to kind of briefly mention is about the accuracy of the data and the nature of this charity as well. If we think about all the local food relief programs, they are very flexible. It's like they have to work with volunteer, and they have to like somehow the location is not correct when I scrape the data, and this the use local center, which means that the nature of the charities is flexible, and we might not have all the accurate data, but it's very good start if you think about maintain the data and start to develop the map more so that we can use it for insight and information and leverage the data. So for the next part, we will include some of the demographic and economic variables so that we can identify area in need. So I will be presented by my teammate Hamish.
Hi everyone, I'm Hamish. I'm a master's student in statistics. Thanks very much, Lan. Just go back to the presentation. So yeah, in conjunction with all of the supermarkets and community meal events that we visualized on the map, we have demographic information, as Lan mentioned, and that's to find the areas, as Kelly mentioned in her introduction, where there are higher levels of food insecurity. Now, food insecurity is a somewhat subjective term, but it's defined by the World Health Organization as related to availability of food. So does a given area actually have fresh, nutritious food available to its people? Access to food. So do people have the resources, financial or otherwise, to attain that food? And the use of food. So do you have running water and gas? So you can actually clean and cook the food. So moving on with that, the question of which LGAs are underserved. Now, these are going to be the LGAs that don't have community meal events and are high in what we consider to be the risk factors for food insecurity. So the demographics most at risk are, of course, those listed on the left. And on the right, we have the demographic information visualized at the LGA level. Now, our choices of variables are related in large part to the fact that they are, well, of course, very much related to food insecurity, but also their availability. The fact that we have 5 measures contributing to an aggregate means that the LGAs are sufficiently differentiated. And what considering this information allows us to do is identify LGAs that are particularly at risk or are suffering from high levels of food insecurity and don't have any relief in the form of community meal events. And an example of that is Cloncurry, to start with. So it has the highest solicitation of specialist homelessness services relative to its population in Queensland from the years 2014 to 2018. Has an Indigenous population of 20.6% and a 78th percentile average unemployment rate over a 10-year period. And another example of an LGA that is potentially in need would be Yarrabah. So also a very high solicitation of specialist homelessness services relative to its population and a high Indigenous population as well. So these are the kinds of things that the map allows us to identify. And when we look at the map again, we see Cloncurry next to Mount Isa in red, and Yarrabah is less visible on this map. Oh yeah, we can look at the map again. Thank you. But if we zoom into the top right here, next to Cairns. So here's Cloncurry. Yeah. And then over here is right next to Cairns is if you got to zoom in. Yeah. And it's a little hard to spot. So no, to the right. So, oh, sorry. Yeah, can I zoom in further? Yeah, and here's Yarrabah next to Cairns. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just have a few concluding notes on the presentation. Go back. Thank you so much. Yeah. So the weights on these importance factors are very much arbitrary, and what we encourage FairShare to do is play around with the weights, the importance weights, and identify LGAs that are at risk in accordance with what they think is important, because we learned from our meetings with them that they have a huge amount of knowledge, of course, about the state of things and about what contributes to food insecurity. So concluding on that note, I'd like to thank everybody who helped us. Thank you, Farzana, Charlie, and Kerry for mentoring us, and thank you, Kelly, for your input during the meetings. Yep, thank you.
Last words, Kelly, if you have any reflection on the team's work or any comments or feedback.
Wow, I'm a bit blown away by what you managed to get done in a short period of time. And I know the data is tricky when we're talking about organisations and communities where populations move in and out, where services are run by volunteers, where during COVID, there's some services shut down because they relied on income from, say, op shops that were then no longer able to operate during periods. So it's been very tricky, and I appreciate the effort and the troubleshooting that's gone into this. And I really look forward to playing around with the data. For us, there is a very disproportionate amount of food insecurity in remote and regional areas, and we are focusing, our new strategic plan has got us focusing in Queensland on getting food out to these areas by using Metcash backloading with Linfox. So our meals will land in an IGA in Cloncurry, and then Mornington Island can come in and pick up 2 pallets of frozen meals once a week, say, for example. We've just employed an Indigenous officer to oversee Far North Queensland for us and to be able to work with organisations there. And he was saying to me today, when are we going to get this? I want to take a look. So it's exciting for our team to sort of have this map and to be able to go and look at the LGAs and pull data from, homelessness data on just general population data, because this isn't something that we can fit into our day-to-day or that we have the skill set for. I mean, I think, I don't think we've got anyone who's ever been involved in data analytics working for us. And yeah, it's been a real eye-opener, and it's certainly made me think about more applications into the future. And I hope this is a start of many projects with QUT. So I'd like to thank all the team for their great work. I'd like to thank Kerry for bringing me in, Farzana, Charlie, Rachel, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. And whoever's responsible at QUT for this Data for Good, it's an excellent program, and I'll be recommending other not-for-profit agencies to take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Tim and Kelly. Now we are in this showcase. Now it's time for a very good panel discussion. We have a wonderful panel, and I would invite Charlie and Tim to come.
So, yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Charlie Moyle. I am a Senior Research Fellow in the School of Management here at QUT, and I'm also the co-lead of the Social Systems domain in the Centre for Data Science with Tim. So I'm going to hand to Tim to introduce.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. So I'm Tim Graham, the other co-lead of the Social Systems domain. I'm a computational sociologist, so I'm one of the people who's like coming from the other side over to here. And yeah, I'm going to hand back to Charlie to kick things off.
So data science for good is a growing and significantly growing area, with many projects aiming to highlight the positive social impact that data science can have. However, despite the emerging range of initiatives, the definition for what is a social good project and what it means for it to be ethical, responsible, and good for society is much harder to find. Generally, the intended beneficiaries of data science for good will not be the ones that are funding it or even helping develop it. And so the risk that the disadvantaged groups and those at the margins might not benefit is very high. So today we're going to have our panelists and we're going to explore the topic of data science for social good, including criticisms, opportunities, and where the field may head in the future. And there'll be time at the end for audience questions and answers. I'm going to hand to Tim to introduce our panelists.
So we have the 5 panelists here, some who have already talked today. So just as a quick explanation before we jump into things, we're going to run through each of the panelists. We've got a bunch of questions for you, basically, and we're hoping that you can wax lyrically about these questions and give us some insights about your particular take on data science and the projects that you're working on. So I'm just by way of introduction, so we've got Dr. Ruth Knight, who's a researcher in QUT's Australian Centre for Philanthropy and Non-Profit Studies. Her work aims to solve complex and challenging problems and find ways to support organisations to create maximum social impact. And then we're heading over to Kelly Watson, who is the Queensland Director of food relief charity FairShare, who, Kelly's already been talking before. So she oversees FairShare's Queensland operations and is responsible for the development and oversight of their major projects. Beginning as product manager in 2010, Kelly has been working with FairShare for more than 11 years. Professor Peter Bade is a leading biostatistician working at the Cancer Council of Queensland. As Senior Manager of Descriptive Epidemiology, as he described before, Peter leads a research program designed to describe the patterns of cancer-related outcomes both nationally and internationally, specifically to better understand why these outcomes depend on where people live and the role of remoteness, area disadvantage, and ethnicity on those patterns. He is the co-lead of the Australian Cancer Atlas project. Next, we have Dr. Jessica Cameron, who is a research fellow in the Descriptive Epidemiology Research Department of Cancer Council Queensland. And she is passionate about using data science to understand health inequalities and risk factors for disease. And is interested in making complex research outputs accessible to the broader public. And we have finally Dr. Rachel Thomas, who is a professor of practice at QUT and data scientist in residence in the Centre for Data Science. So she's the co-founder of Fast AI, which created the most popular deep learning course in the world. And has been featured in The Economist, MIT Tech Review, and Forbes. Previously, she was the founding director of the University of San Francisco Center for Applied Data Ethics. And Rachel was selected by Forbes as one of 20 incredible women in AI. So with that, we might jump into the questions, having introduced the panelists today. And basically how it's going to work, as I mentioned before, we've got about 5 minutes and a barrage of questions for you. And yeah, Charlie and I will take turns, providing this barrage of questions. And I'll try to keep time as best as I can. And we might, if we don't mind, maybe we'll start with Ruth, if that's okay. Hello,
everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So I'm going to sit down we'll become comfortable. So Ruth, I guess the first question is, how do you think data plays a role in the not-for-profit sector? And do you think not-for-profits are embracing data science?
Yes, So I'm from the Centre for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Studies here at QUT, and we've been working with the nonprofit sector for 20 years and seeing some enormous changes, I suppose, in the sector and how it thinks about what it does and why it does and how it's accountable to beneficiaries, but also donors, etc., and the public. And I think, and I'm obviously talking from my own perspective as well, from both working in the sector and obviously working at the university as well, is seeing how data is really changing the way that we think about social problems or understand social problems. So it's enabling us, and we've seen some amazing examples today, how we can actually use data to make us think differently about where our services should be, who we should be delivering our services to, but then also how we can measure and report on our impact. So I think these amazing, technologies that we have today is really enabling us to do that. But it's also making us much more accountable to our beneficiaries and the people that donate and the people that support the work of the nonprofit and social enterprise sector. The other thing I think that data is doing is helping philanthropists. So that's, I'm talking about grant makers and even government who are funding community services. It's making them be a lot more thoughtful again about who should they fund, why should they fund it, what are the impacts of funding certain programs and services in certain areas, and where is money best spent. So I think that it's not only having an impact on the way that organisations are running, but also funding those projects as well. And then finally, which is a big topic always of conversation at the centre, is around evaluation and reporting impact. So how are we using data to show what we're doing and why we're doing it and the impact that we're having on society? So data, again, we collect a lot of data, okay? Organisations seem to love data, but it's what we do with that data that I think we're getting better at, and we're able to be more wise about what we collect and then the insights that we gain from that data. So I think that, I'm sure you'll agree with me that data is not just data for the sake of it. We can go and collect lots of information, and obviously we're talking about qualitative and quantitative, but there are some incredible organisations that are now starting to think more wisely and strategically about data and saying, why are we collecting this information and what insights is it giving us? And then how can we provide those insights back to the people who care about what we do?
So you've sort of answered the next question, which is great in terms of time. But could you say, briefly, what do you think is the future of data science for social good? And what do you think is the cutting edge, basically?
Yeah, I think you can see the technologies. I think the cutting edge is really about how we use data to present and visualize it to people, because numbers, I don't even like numbers, right? Numbers can overwhelm people and not mean too much to people. But when you tell stories with your data, and not just the numbers, but the qualitative data that we're getting as well, and when we're really able to shape that data into stories, and I'm working with some incredible organisations that are starting to do this now and actually realising that numbers kind of go over people's heads a lot of the time. And whilst it's important and you need to make sure that you've got that, it's about how you tell your story using that data. And I think that might seem pretty simple and not kind of too cutting edge, but I think that it's the way that we're going. It's becoming a better way of making data useful. So I'm working with, and I'm again thinking of some amazing organisations that are already using data to visualise and use, as you know, infographics and videos and Tableau. So the Tableau sort of technology, which is what we're also using at the centre, because we've been doing work on giving around Australia and where people are giving. And we do annually, we do reports around tax deductible gifts. So where are the donors? Where are they giving? And we're enabling organisations to have that data through Tableau, for instance, and they're able to also really choose their campaigns very carefully and their marketing campaigns very carefully, given the data that they now know about giving and where people are giving and what they're giving to. So I think really the cutting edge is about how we use that, how we visualize it, and how we strategically enable us to do better services and better campaigns. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you another really thorny question, and if you could do it in maybe a minute or less, that would be wonderful. But I mean, given all this, do you think that there's any possibility for inequalities with like who can access data science, particularly around disadvantaged and marginalized groups?
Yes, definitely. There's always that possibility that there are organisations who are passionate about what they do. And Kelly, you've kind of described a typical organisation of where you do your work very well, but bringing in the idea of data analytics, or even collecting data, or even knowing the technologies of how to analyse that data, that is where we start to actually see the larger organisations that might be able to invest in that capability be separated from the smaller organisations that don't have the people or the technology to be able to do that. And of course, that has then a flow-on effect to the people that they serve and the communities that they're working in. So I really do think that we need to make sure that we have the capabilities within organisations, or we partner with QUT, for example, to make sure that organisations have access to the skills that organisations need. But we also make sure that the flow-on effect is having a benefit to our communities.
Thanks so much, Ruth. I want to turn to Peter and just ask, in your role, how have you seen Cancer Council Queensland evolve over the last 5 to 10 years in terms of data science?
With the work that we carry out, it's just about all research. So it's actually been getting a better grasp about what the data available is, because even 15 years ago, each of the data custodians of people like the cancer registry or the hospital data collection, there was a large amount of barriers about making their data available at the geographical area level. There was all that fear about a cancer cluster and the data being identifiable and ending up on the front page of the Courier Mail, which with the developments of the data science and the models and the data smoothing and things like that, it's actually opened up the capability of data custodians having confidence in how their data is going to be used. And one of the consequences is that there's often a large amount of data cleaning which has to be carried out with these data collections, which were originally designed around financial arrangements or other accountabilities rather than as a research data set, which often brings in additional uncertainty, and you have to have more complex models in order to integrate that, which I think that characteristic is actually the greatest amount of development with more data being available, recognising that there are gaps there which need additional complexities with the data science methodology.
Yep. And what do you think the key gaps are moving forward, like for your organisation? Where would you like to see data science go within your organisation?
Well, I guess having greater amounts of data with the characteristics of the geographical area and the characteristics of the individuals in those areas. And I guess at the moment, but the Cancer Council has a large amount of interest. So the comments that I'm making are more research orientated, and there's other data science needs with the whole organisation. However, I guess just thinking about the Atlas, it's having that greater capability of getting details about what the differences are at that small geographical area level, and to find out what the key drivers of the geographical differences that we can see, obviously, with the cancer burden.
Yeah. And what's the biggest risk of not adopting and really focusing on data science within the Cancer Council Queensland?
We'll just kind of continue carrying on as what we're doing now, which, as was talked about earlier, if we don't have the data and the evidence in order to motivate change, it's always hard to have change happening. And it's clear at the moment that the cancer burden varies depending on where people live, which will continue if there's not changes made with intervention or with extra resources in the areas of the greatest need.
Thanks, Peter.
Perfect. That's perfect timing, actually. Thank you, Peter. Yeah. So we're moving to Kelly, and yeah. So you mentioned that data analytics is kind of a bit of a new thing for FairShare. But what do you think? I mean, what do you think are the greatest challenges for data science in the organisation?
So until recently, we collect basic data. So if you walk into our kitchens, you will see like a old 1980s digital clock ticking up, which has our meals on it. So we're very much about the data around the meals made, how many kilos of sweet potatoes we've got in a year, X, Y, and Z. But what we lacked was a lot of data about the people receiving our meals, because the agencies who administer our meals often don't have the funding, the resources, or the ability to collect that data. And in a lot of cases, this is really sensitive data. Nobody wants to get food relief, you know? And if you were to go and try and make clients who come into a place sign up, it would put a lot of them off and put barriers up. So it's that tricky thing of managing the human side. And I've seen it done incredibly well out at Gundia Health, where they've got culturally appropriate policies in place and all kinds of data collection programs out there that aren't invasive, that let people freely give details and that keep things really private. And that's the main thing. And it's really important that when people rock up to agencies and have data collected, that they are confident that their data is going to be treated privately and that they're treated with dignity. So it's a tricky one. It's not like rocking up to hospital where you know you have to hand over X, Y, and Z, and you do so. And it's all, it's the not-for-profit sector is tricky because there's so much disparity in funding. So we give our meals to the Salvation Army, who are incredibly well resourced, but then we also give our meals to a little organisation down the road called Burrangilly, who work with 4 elderly ladies who unload 2 pallets off a truck by hand, and who you can't email because maybe they look at their emails once every 6 months, and we're trying to get reporting off them. So it's challenging, but we can find ways around it, I'm sure.
So those ways, this leads perfectly into the next question. What are the kinds of strategies or have you considered strategies for how, data science might be adopted given these kinds of, issues around anonymizing data and protecting, sensitive information and things? Like, is there some kind of strategic approach that you've got in mind?
Because we are more a middleman, we're not at the coalface seeing clients. We're more a manufacturer. So we make the meals and give them out to organisations. So what we want to become better at is working with organisations to ensure food safety is carried on right through. And even then there's data being collected that there's a lot of privacy issues around and the likes, and agencies take offence because we're kind of extending our reach into their domain. So, but we're going to need to collect that data, because one of the reasons I'm late today is because I've been undergoing international food safety audits. But we're going to need a whole new data side on food safety. And so for the first time, we're working with digital systems. And to be honest, it's very difficult introducing those systems with chefs who probably last looked at anything like that 20 years ago. So we're going to have to train and upgrade our staff to take on this new level we have to aspire to.
Yeah. And so the last question, the fun, open-ended, tricky one, I guess, in a minute or less, if that's okay.
Yes.
Is so. So what would, I'm going to go off yeah, a little bit here and just say, what would you imagine is like the ultimate use of data science, given some of these challenges and opportunities that you've mentioned? How do you see the future?
I would like to see us be able to use data science to back our grant applications. I'd like us to have some really meaty data available so that we could say, okay, we anecdotally know that this is happening here in X, Y, and Z, but we need to be backed up by that. And we need to be able to prove to governments, to philanthropists and such, that our project is going in the right direction. For example, I'll try to do this in 30 seconds. Talking to the Mayor of Mornington Island, data would tell us that that's an area with X, Y, and Z. Unemployment, you know, so many kids not going to school, whatever. They need food relief, but they only need vegetables. They hunt on the weekends. They have a great supply of protein in there. So drilling down further with them, it was like, nah, we're right for that. But what we need is meal bases. So then we would make a meal base that is just based on 6 different veggies, green coconut curry, and then they can pop in, you know, crocodile, and we're going, okay, stew, just add roux. Yeah. So that was one of their ideas. Yeah. But so we would do that. So we need to sort of have that broad reaching data that shows us what to do, but then go on the ground and see what the people and the communities actually do need, because it's not a one size fits all approach, and hampers for many years has been the approach. Yeah. And it suits some communities and it doesn't suit others. And, you know, culturally appropriate offerings, another one. There's no point going in somewhere with pork when, yeah. Sorry, that didn't really answer that question, but it's something I wanted to say.
That was excellent. Jessica, I wanted to ask you, what do you think not-for-profits should consider when setting up a new data science project?
That's a very important question. So I guess our work is funded by donors, and we really value and appreciate the money that those donors set aside to support our projects. And so we want to make sure our objectives align very closely with their priorities. But also out of appreciation for their gift to us, we want to make sure that the outputs are translatable, and that means having the outputs available to the right audiences, so the key stakeholders, and also making sure they're accessible, so they're presented in a way that speaks to the audience. Yeah. Which leads into my next question. How do you make data science more accessible to the general public? I know this is your area, so any insights would be great. Well, this is great. And this is one of the questions that we put to the group, the team that worked on our project, was how do we make it more accessible? So they've really presented really nicely about how to do that from a fine perspective. But more broadly, it's really important to give context and frame your research outputs in terms of how it can be interpreted and how it can't be interpreted. Yeah, so for example, recently we've, at Cancer Council Queensland, we've initiated a program where we make lay summaries available on our website for every single paper that we publish. So that means for every single paper we have in everyday language, what was already known, what's new, and the most important key findings from the paper. So that makes it available to stakeholders who might come from a broad range of areas, and also people who are everyday people who are interested in cancer. Yeah.
Yep. And what do you think's the key benefits of data science social good projects?
Oh, I mean, we've benefited so much. The guys have really put together some really great ideas for us and reported on it beautifully. Thank you very much. So when the Atlas was in development, we had stakeholders advise, we had visualization specialists advise on our on the visualizations, and yeah, stakeholders use the Atlas and trial it and give us feedback on it. And what the team working on our project has done has come from a really knowledgeable background, knowledgeable in how to communicate data, and brought this fresh perspective and holistic perspective, not looking at single visualizations, but looking at how all the information is presented as a whole. And yeah, so it's been really valuable to get that perspective on how people interact with the Atlas and use it. So thank you very much.
So it's about how to get people to engage with data science more closely and understand it better.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll hand over to you, Tim.
You're keeping time. Thanks, Charlie. Well, Rachel, so I've got, this is great actually, because there's 6 questions for you. Yeah. Well, I mean, AI and ethics is a huge thing. And
yes.
To start with, I mean, what would you say to not-for-profits about what they might consider when starting to adopt data science in terms of like governance and ethics issues?
Okay, yeah. And it's regarding governance. First of all, I loved Kelly's point earlier about making sure you're talking to people on the ground to kind of capture stories that may not be present in data. And I think that sort of qualitative information and that kind of close conversation and collaboration with people on the ground is crucial for any project. Yeah, regarding governance, it's definitely important to be thinking about risk around privacy and surveillance as well. Of for data, kind of, do you need to capture this data, and if so, what are the risks of doing so? And then I think these sorts of collaborations with with academic data scientists can be really fantastic and fruitful.
Yeah. So you touched on surveillance there. What are your thoughts about surveillance? This is a little on the darker dystopic kind of side of things. Yeah, so what are your thoughts about surveillance and issues of control and power for disadvantaged groups who might be providing data or participating in these kinds of programs?
Yeah, that's a real risk. And I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. There was a very thought-provoking article in Nature a few years ago that looked back on, over the past 10 years, there have been a number of projects that have used cell phone data from low-income countries in the wake of humanitarian crises, such as earthquakes or kind of disease outbreaks. But often this data is taken without consent and it's anonymized, but there are risks of de-anonymization and of how governments could potentially use this. And there's also questions about, were many of these projects actually helpful? Some of the insights they had, there was one about where malaria was most common in Kenya. Those insights could have been found other ways that were less invasive. And so I think it is also helpful always to ask that question of kind of, are there less invasive ways to try to explore these questions and reach these conclusions?
Yep. And so, I mean, bouncing off something we talked about before, how do you think like governments and universities could incentivize data science for not-for-profits? Because I get the sense that there's a lot of difficulties and also not a lot of awareness potentially of the power of data science. So how do you think we can go about promoting and facilitating?
Yes,
this?
This sort of partnership is great. Yeah. And as we've heard, I think from several panelists, often nonprofits are lacking the in-house skill or even awareness of, and they have huge amounts of expertise and skill in some areas, but sometimes are lacking the data science skills or expertise, or even the knowledge of kind of what they should be doing with the data they have, what they can do with the data they have. And I think it's important that academics or anyone assisting with this really try to center the needs of the nonprofits, because we do have something of a problem in machine learning with sometimes it being a solution looking for a problem. And it's really, really crucial that you center kind of what the problem is, even if the solution turns out to not be as exciting as like the latest machine learning technique.
Yep. And so back to ethics again, what are your thoughts about developing ethical frameworks for data science? And I mean, obviously AI and machine learning are kind of like one piece of the pie. So that's a pretty broad question, but did you have any thoughts about like ethical frameworks?
Yes, so ethical frameworks are useful. I'll recommend the Santa Clara University QUT Centre has a tech ethics toolkit, and it has practices you can implement in your company or in your nonprofit, in your organization, that include things like, having a regular time for kind of red teaming, where you proactively look for what could go wrong, how could things be weaponized or misused. And so it's very useful to have those practices. I will note that they don't eliminate the need for regulation, that we absolutely need regulation for anything that involves human rights, protecting human rights, or dealing with negative kind of externalities to society.
And have you got any hot tips on like skills and training? How can we help the sector? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, I think it's definitely learning Python is really useful. There's a lot you can do with data analysis. You don't have to, pursue it full time, but I think to get some sense of what it can do is helpful to have. And there are a lot of great kind of free online resources out there.
And do you think there are enough data scientists out there to help do all of this in the not-for-profit sector?
So, I mean, some of it is a matching problem. Like I definitely do talk to a lot of data scientists and machine learning engineers that are kind of really hungry for more meaningful problems to work on and are kind of searching for more meaningful work to do. So there is something of a matching problem, although I do think increasingly kind of everyone in society is going to need more data literacy.
So we're going to throw it out to the floor. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists at all? Yep.
First of all, thank you very much. Those are really insightful perspectives. I'm interested to know, as we move forward with more data science for social good, what do you think good ingredients or things that we should try to look out for as we're doing new projects? What sort of tips do you have for the next round of these kinds of projects?
From my perspective, I realised that we should have done a bit of work before that on our question, because I didn't realise how broad the question was asking. We cut it down a bit, but it became more prevalent throughout the project that we really just needed to have trimmed that down. And from my mind, I was just trying not to be too specific, which was quite, the opposite tact. I should have been really specific. So I think it might be good to develop sort of like an induction per se, so that people like me who are data illiterate and last studied stats back in 1987, I could have framed my question a bit better. So I could have done my homework, so to speak. But I know that you're probably thinking, oh, we don't want to burden you with having to do this pre-work. But I think when we're getting such a great service pro bono from an organisation, we can certainly put a bit more thought into making sure that our questions are ready to be answered straight away, without the students having to find out what Ask Izzy is, for example, with you guys. So sorry for that. That's just one example.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Do you want me to just add to that,
yes,
Charlie?
Go for it, please.
I was only thinking from the perspective of making sure that the organisations that are left, what they're left with, they can go on and use, into the future. because some organisations can get so excited and inspired by things like Tableau and all things that are very, very useful and to maybe students here. Students feel very comfortable with all of that technology, but when you leave and the organisation then goes, oh, okay, what do we need to build the capability for organisations to use that information after the students drop out or the project finishes. And that's the key thing I'd like to see, because otherwise we're getting, organisations all excited, but we're not building capability.
Yep.
So that's...
Okay, so in the interest of time, because Tim just showed me the time, I just want to ask one last question, which is, what's the one thing that's needed to help the not-for-profit sector embrace data science? So if you could think of one thing, each of you, one thing, what's the key thing that's needed?
They need to ask themselves, what do I want to, Kelly kind of touched it on, what do I want to tell people about what we do and why we do it? If they ask themselves the right question and then go, how might the data I've already got or the data that I want to collect be able to tell that story, then I think we can get people inspired and search for the right support and the right capabilities to help them tell that story.
I think maybe, and this is probably true for nonprofits, but I even see it with some machine learning engineers, of kind of a deeper understanding of what data science can and cannot do. And so I kind of often hear questions of like, oh, let's use machine learning to solve X. And this can come from people with strong technical backgrounds where it's not a problem that can be solved by machine learning. And so just, kind of understanding better kind of what is and isn't possible would be useful.
Probably a clear grasp about what the key questions are, which will make the matching up of what the data needed, what the skills are much easier.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of opportunities for exploring the data that we actually have about people who, the data that we actually have, we'll say. And I think that we're so busy in our everyday tasks. Actually, it's kind of similar to what Kelly's been talking about. Busy in everyday tasks, we don't have time to think about how we could understand that data better and therefore serve people better in our organisation.
Yep. And Kelly, any last thoughts?
No, my was a question. Was a combination of both Peter and Jessica's answers.
Having a bit of a strategy and an idea of where you want to head and what needs to be done.
What are those important questions?
Yeah. Okay. And Tim, would you like to just wrap up? Or do you want me to?
I'll jump up for 1 second, really just to say thank you so much to the panelists for your time and for sharing your experiences and your wisdom. And if we could give a round of applause to the panelists today. And with that, we conclude the Social Good Showcase. But I just want to say that we're looking to, like, business is booming, as you can see by the amazing work that's happening. But we're looking to extend. So for anyone on Zoom, for anyone here who is a student, data scientist, or not-for-profit, if you're looking to get involved or you want to just connect up and have a chat, please do so, because we're really keen to talk to you. And so thank you again for coming along. Thank you again so much for your time. And now we can enjoy some refreshments. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.